Hello, Athlete Mindset community. This is Bonta Sumii, the host of Athlete Mindset. Before we dive into this episode, I want to invite you to support the mission and purpose of our show. For $10 a month, you can help to make sure these conversations get to as many athletes, teams, coaches, and sport mental health environments as possible. As a subscriber, you will receive exclusive content and updates on current topics in athlete mental health, and you'll be directly contributing to the betterment of mental health for all athletes. Join the cause. Subscribe at sportse.io/athlete and make a difference today. Again, that's sportse.io/athlete. With your support and amplification, we can ensure more voices are heard and more individuals and communities are positively impacted. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Athlete Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Bonta Sumii, and today we will be recording our third episode of a three-part series entitled Developing the Next Generation of Mental Performance Consultants. And today I will have Dan Ourian, Certified Mental Performance Consultant and Assistant Director of the Applied Sport and Performance Psychology program at Dominican University of California. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We're going to jump into a few really important ways that mental performance consultation and or coaching can help in actually athletic and sport coaching, and how important it is for us to have placements in our programs of training. So first question, I know that you are a coach, you favor basketball, but we ain't going to tell everybody that. And so how do you bring your training, education, philosophies, theories of being a certified mental performance consultant to actually coaching a sport? How does that happen for you, and how can it happen for others?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for me, having had experience as a coach, and yes, basketball is my game. And so that's what I've coached over the years. But I really got into this field as a desire to add a layer of value to my coaching practice, the knowledge and understanding of the mental side, because I always felt as an athlete that that was a miss for me, that I knew that pressure situations made things more challenging for me, first and foremost. And I felt like there was a miss in terms of the coaching I received in the mental side of the game. We all know it's mental. We all point to how mental sport can be. But then what are we doing as coaches to support that and coach that up? I think so much of the time we just kind of tell people, hey, focus out there, calm down. Right. But
chill out.
Coaches,
just do it.
Chill out. When you as the coach, you're the last chill person that's out there.
Yeah.
And so I think for one, it's recognizing the value of knowing some basics of the mental game. But then, for me, what happened, a funny thing along the way, which happened to me, was I found I was super interested in sports psychology in and of itself as a discipline. And I decided that's really a direction I wanted to go. And in that, how can I weave in some of those concepts and tenets into my coaching practice? And so, for me, it was really taking a step back and saying, okay, there's more here that I don't know. I don't know that I don't know, right? There's more to understanding mindset and coaching up mindset than I even realized. I think we often jump right to what are the mental skills? Okay, confidence, goal setting, self-talk, etc. But before that, let's start with unpacking a player's whole life, a sort of a holistic approach to looking at who they are as individuals. What are the systems in place that impact that individual? And take a zoomed out approach to looking at here is a person participating in sport and they are not static. They are constantly changing. It's a dynamic human being that I'm here with. And so the things that I learned, I was able to implement into my coaching practice. I've since stepped away from on-court coaching to focus on sports psychology and private practice, and also with our program at Dominican. but I think it was really impactful for me as a coach to learn all of the theory and research and have more of a sound understanding of that. For us, I think two things. One, when we train our students now, we're looking at how can they work as coaches themselves, given
Mm-hmm.
this kind of background, but also how can they work with a coach or work through a coach in getting
Mm-hmm.
across some of these mental performance concepts. So when they're trainees, how do they go about influencing the coach in terms of their practice design or understanding a coach's messaging and then being able to craft their messaging in a way that supports the coach's messaging. So there's a lot in there, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to unpack it
Yeah, for sure. I
a
think,
little bit about that.
no, it's awesome. It's a lot about that. It's super valuable. I love that you're sharing a little bit of your lived experience and story behind your attraction to sports psychology via coaching. Let's talk about the youth level right now, real quick. In your professional opinion, what are like the top two ways that a coach can improve their own sort of mental fitness and how they address their athletes as a whole person versus we got to win or we got to win? Can it be both? Can they co-occur? Like, what would be the top two tips that you would give a youth coach about
Yeah,
how
I
they can
think,
help themselves, right? And help their athletes?
yeah, it can coexist. I think
Yep.
you have to recognize your context though. So as a youth coach, your job is really less about winning, and removing your ego from the activity is super hard, but that's what it calls for. Remembering when we're talking about, before you get to the varsity level, right? If we're really talking about younger athletes, you're really looking to develop a love of the sport and a desire to improve. And those are the two pieces we always try to hit on, those intrinsic motivation pieces of, am I having fun? Do I want to sign up the following year? Do I want to come back the following year? Am I getting players to come back and stay in the sport? And then, second of all, how am I creating a world in which they feel like they're improving on a regular basis? And that can be really, really hard to do. If you're
Mm-hmm.
developing those two elements, you're developing the intrinsic motivation piece, and that is going to help keep them coming back and keep their motivation strong, their well-being high, and they're able to derive some of the benefits and the life skills that come from sport. But it's not a given. It's really, really not a given. And so, one, I would say for coaches, one, recognize you are a performer in your own right. We
Yes.
always start there. You
Yes.
perform as well. You perform in the performance, but you also perform in the practice.
That's right.
And your performance is about how you're crafting the design of the practice, how you're developing relationships with each of the players. Are you checking in with each player on a regular basis? Do you know something about them outside of the sport context? And so essentially, you're creating that climate or that environment where they feel connected to you and connected to the group. So I would say that's first and foremost. Recognize you're a performer in your own right, and
Mm-hmm.
your coaching is highly impactful on this athlete's experience. And then the second thing I would say, the second tip, it's really a huge direction, would be developing a mindfulness practice. And, this is something that I've taught about quite a bit. And it's oftentimes a real leap to take for coaches. It's a
Yep.
leap for young athletes to take, but I'm very big on taking on a mindfulness practice. And some people think that's too much or they're too busy. There's the old adage, it's like, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, then you should meditate for 10 minutes. It's like, if you feel like you don't have 5 minutes in your day, then I'll tell you what, you should go sit for 10 minutes and really try to take some time out and gain perspective. So, I'm happy to go into more detail around that, why mindfulness piece. But I think for coaches, it's so, so important to be able to be present moment focused and to be able to really read whatever situation is coming without the sort of highs and lows of emotionality.
For sure. Yes, please dive in. I have some specific questions. And the coaches that I've worked with and done trainings with as well, it is a leap for them to build a mindfulness practice. In this case, the specific mindfulness practice is in the form of meditation. There are different kinds of mindfulness practices, right? So
Mhm.
I think that they say, oh, does it mean I have to sit with my like legs crossed and say om and like be fully tuned in and not have distracting thoughts and like I don't know how to meditate well. Like I'm not a good meditator. These are literal things that I've heard from athletes and coaches. In this case, how would you guide a coach in developing a meditation practice that is realistic and something that they can, feel good about?
I think we sometimes think it has to be X amount of time, it has to be 10 minutes or more. I have to, remove all distractions, sit a certain way, and I'll
Mhm.
never get
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
And I would say that all of that is false. You really would want to start with baby steps. If you have a minute, use a minute. If you have 5 minutes, that's better. And if you have 10 minutes, yes, there are changes in the brain that research has shown start around the 9 minute mark. So, yes, if you have 10 minutes a day, there are huge benefits to your brain that would come from a regular meditation practice. But I understand also it's a huge lift. It's a big ask for people, especially with the way modern society is and our many distractions, the buzz, the ding, the text, the constant
Right.
emails, etc. So,
Exactly.
informal mindfulness, can you find a way to incorporate mindfulness into your everyday life? So, essentially, single tasking something you're doing. When you're doing something, can you do just that one thing
Right. Yep.
and avoid the phone, avoid emails, avoid other tasks? If you're in traffic, can you sit with your hands at 10 and 2 and not turn on the radio, not make a phone call, and not put on this or any other podcast, right? Super challenging. And then add traffic. If you're suggesting to me that I must sit there and just focus on the road in traffic for a half hour, you're crazy. And I get it. But that's a mindfulness practice. If you're waiting
Right.
online at the grocery store, can you simply wait
That's right.
online? Brushing your teeth or eating, can you just do those things and then practice within the fabric of your day, just single tasking? Because that's a mindfulness practice. You're just
Yes.
changing the anchor, right? In
That's right.
seated meditation, oftentimes we're anchored to our breath. In this scenario, what we're suggesting is you're anchoring to something you're already doing. You're just stopping your mind from wandering as much as it will naturally do anyway.
How does this help a coach to be better, to add that layer, to be better for themselves and for the athletes that they coach?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, our ability to be present moment focused. So much of the time as a coach, we're upset about a call that occurred,
That's right.
a turnover that a player made, a missed shot, something that went wrong several minutes ago, several possessions ago. And the residue of that kind of weighs on us, and we're still kind of hanging on to that situation that occurred in the past. Or we're so far future focused that we're not impactful in the present. We're thinking about, okay, how are we going to come back? What are we going to do? Are we going to win this game? If we lose, what are the repercussions of that? Or I have these
Right.
plans later. I'm worried about pickup or
Yeah.
anything that's
Yeah.
happening in the
That's
future,
real. Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, can I be really present moment focused more of the time? And that's really challenging. And then the other piece is the sort of emotional up and down that comes with coaching.
Yes.
And so we all know, we've seen the coaches who are sort of, short fused and losing their temper at players, at officials, and who would observe themselves in video and look back and say, that's not the best me. I wouldn't want to be that way again
Mhm.
if I had a choice. And whether or not they watch the video, they're not as impactful in the present moment as they can be because their emotions have pulled them in all types of directions. So, part of what a mindfulness practice can do can keep you from having those large ups and downs. You can recognize that you're feeling a certain way and you can work more comfortably in releasing that emotional up and down. And so, I
Yes.
think that's a huge part of it, that sort of non judgment piece that kind of comes with a practice to say, whatever happens is information. It doesn't have to have the same weight of emotion that I'm allowing it to have. And I think mindfulness over time, again, it's not a magic pill, it doesn't happen
That's
right
right.
away, but over
Nope.
time, it
Mhm.
can help you develop that ability to strategically look at what happens for what it is, as opposed to adding the good or bad to it.
That's right. I love it. We still have to put the reps in for our mental training, for the things that we do for our mind, not just our bodies and the physical skills. It's the same approach and so,
Right.
so valuable how you've broken it down. I really, really appreciate it. Shifting a little bit to your role as the assistant director over at Dominican University of California's program for sport and performance psychology, you help organize all the placements for those who are pursuing their certification in mental performance consultation. How important is placements to the development of this kind of practitioner in your eyes?
I'm biased, but obviously I think it's huge. And I think our program does an amazing job of providing that applied experience that many other programs do not. We're not research based. We have the word applied in the title of the program, and for good reason. All of our master's students will go through the applied experiences of 3 placements. Each of those placements give them a different context, a different demographic, different population that they're working with in order to get that training. They have an individual supervisor that they're meeting with once a week. That supervisor is reviewing audio and video of sessions that they have. They also have group supervision with their cohort and a group supervisor to help go through different challenges that might have come up and to group think ways to work through those. So, obviously they're accruing hours. Our program is completely in alignment with Association for Applied Sports Psychology's CMPC credential. We're a one-stop shop for everything you need for that. But the placements in particular, we've created this template where people can go through this progression of placements and get the experience that takes their learning from the books and the theories and the research, the evidence, which is critical, and takes it into real life. And we have many students who have said, it's one thing to go through the courses, the coursework, the prerequisites. It's totally different once the placements start, and I get to actually
Yes.
be in front
Yep.
of real life performers.
Mm-hmm.
And I have support. They get a ton of support, but this is now where they get the reps. This is where they
Yes.
get to actually do the work. And many are sort of super excited by that and then recognize once they start, there's so much they didn't realize. There's so much they now see. I now know that I didn't know, right? How it actually is when you're sitting in front of a athlete or you're embedded with a team, going to practices, games, and having that experience. So I think it's huge. I don't know how, and I went through a similar program. I don't know how I would be a practitioner from day one of graduation if I didn't have that experience, because
Yeah.
so much of my ability as a practitioner was refined through the placements. And I think that's critical in what we do.
For sure. It's so impressive, and I highly respect the way that you all go about it. I wouldn't put my name or brand to the program as a very proud advisory board member. What you guys do and how you do it to prepare these human beings to help and serve other human beings is really, really fantastic. I know firsthand too, because I bring on a lot of your graduates to Ath Mindset, and that's not a coincidence or random at all. And they do fantastic work and are just great people, to be honest, which is really, really important. I think too, what's important to say when you do this applied work, you learn not only how to literally apply what you've learned, but feel what it feels like. Like know yourself in conjunction with another individual and like really feel what that feels like, all the anxiety, the joy, the fear all together, and actually then being able to talk about it like you said with your cohort and your supervisors and really unpack that and like really be informed and learn as you go, which I think again is an opportunity through your internship process that and those placements that can't be like duplicated anywhere else. So I really, really appreciate that. It's been fantastic talking with you. Are there any like other points regarding coaching as we wrap it up that you'd like to add? I know that And I want to say, I see coaches as human beings. They're high performers. They're not perfect. They're not robots. They do the best they can under a lot of high performing moments. How can we as non-coaches be more compassionate of them? And also, how can we sort of put a call to action to coaches to be a little bit more understanding of yourself and provide a more sort of rounded, layered approach to their coaching through the mental performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all coaches, right? So many of us parents become volunteer coaches, right? Youth who grow up and play the sport often come back and coach. So many people are coaches. There's so much value in recognizing that the coach is a person too. And I think maybe coaches often get a lot of gruff or heat for some of their choices, but it's important that we all realize that many of us will coach in our lives. Coaches are part of sort of the overall village that raises people. And so it's so important to keep in mind that they require compassion as well. But I would say to coaches out there, it's so important to have some element of understanding of the mental side of the sport. And it doesn't necessarily mean you go and get a master's in sports psychology.
Right.
We also have a certificate program at our institution. But regardless of whether you are curious about Dominican University's program or not, I would say for any coach out there, the value of understanding the person over and above your understanding of the X's and O's, the technical and tactical side is so important because they don't leave their challenges when they come to the field. They come to the field or the court as a human being, as a person with a mindset and a personality. And so all of that requires some sort of understanding in your ability to impact them because you will have an impact. It's a matter of will it be a great impact, a neutral impact, or a negative impact? And so we obviously want to keep all the impacts into the positive side of the ledger as much as we can.
For sure, the ledger. This has been an amazing conversation with you, Dan. I so appreciate you. The third podcast episode of the 3-part series on developing the next generation of mental performance consultants. I can't appreciate you and all your colleagues over at the DUC that help all of us to be better, more insightful, aware. And just thank you so much for the time that you took today to hang out with me today.
Well, Lisa, we're so glad to have you on our advisory board. You're a treasure trove for so many things, and we're just super grateful for the relationship. So thank you, and thank you for the time.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Athlete Mindset is part of the CASSource Podcast Network. At CASSource, we love podcasts. In fact, we love building podcasts, everything from development to production. Because of all that, we're growing this one-of-a-kind podcast network. If you have a podcast or looking to launch a new podcast, then we should talk. You can message me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz or hit us up any way that works for you by searching CASSource on your social media app of choice. Let's talk about your podcast joining this one-of-a-kind podcast network, the CASSource Podcast Network.